Water Users Association.
Jamie Kelly, Mojave County Water Authority.
Representative Gail Griffin.
Kevin Rogers, Arizona Cotton Growers.
Lisa Atkins, State Land Commissioner.
Virginia O'Connell, Arizona Water Banking Authority.
Richard Humphreys, Corallo Engineers.
Cindy Rule, ADWR.
Orestes Morphine on behalf of Chuck Cullum.
Bruce Hallen, Salt River Project.
Clint Chandler, ADWR. Brett Esplin, ADWR.
Kelly Brown, ADWR.
Lonnie Frost with Pinal County. Reed Lockerger with Salt River Project. Doug Dunham, F4.
Vivian Boschi, ADWR.
Jeff Inwood, ADWR Hydrology.
Martin Stiles, ADWR. Jay Tompkins, Senate Tribal Council of Arizona.
Dave Roberts from SRP.
Pandia from Corallo Engineers. Sam Hughes, Land Department. Karen Modesto, ADWR Statewide Planning. Joanna Altan, Arizona Public. Hilton McGuire, Arizona Farm Bureau. Sharon Carpenter, House Staff. Attending for Paul Gardner with the Town of Clean Creek.
Sarah Porter, Kyle Center.
And last, Scott Dini, TNC.
And there is one person on the phone. Would you like to introduce yourself? Guess not. It's a stakeholder, Tricia
Jared.
Clint, just how many desks remain occupied at ADWR right now?
We'll share them all over the place.
Okay. Well, beginning on our agenda, at the last council meeting, that's what we're calling it from now on, behind the GWAICC council. At the last council meeting, Representative Griffin brought up this potential water storage sites on Arizona State Trust land report and indicated that this would be a good opportunity to discuss it. Representative Griffin, would you like to kind of take us through what your ideas and thoughts are on this?
I would be happy to. Back a couple years ago, 2016, we had a striker bill that the State Land Commissioner and the Director of Department of Water Resources shall consult, develop a plan to create additional water storage, acceptable sites to construct new water storage facilities on state trust land, and identify, this was 6 of the most potentially acceptable sites. And the storage for underground storage defined in Section 45-80201. So the report was due December 17th, and I have a copy of the report. The report throughout talks about dams and reservoirs, and that was not the intent of the bill. It was to accomplish similar projects of what Ocean County is doing. When we talk about dams and reservoirs, that automatically brings in the federal government, and I don't think we need the federal government to make dictates to us in Arizona. So I would like to have the report redone, amended, so that it does identify, and I have talked to Lisa and Tom, and I think the intent of the bill was not reflective of the report.
Then do we need to revise the report or see if we can get it revised and then move forward with a more thorough discussion of it?
Either revised or a new report that reflects the language in the bill.
Anyone else have any comments on this particular situation? Representative Griffin, I do agree with you that the report does not reflect the bill. That is, as to storage opportunities. Who's speaking for the department here today?
Well, we'll rework it. Yeah.
Thank you.
The representative has spoken to the director, and we will until we do the report.
And we'll be an active partner in that. I think we have examples on trust land where there have been multiple parties involved in structures that are reflected in Cochise County. One of them is Horseshoe Draw, which was recently last year, was lauded as a very successful project, and it involved a variety of landowners, the NRCD, over which I am the commissioner in addition. It's amazing how that happened. And so I think we can use Horseshoe Draw as the example for where there might be other opportunities around the state. It also allows us to engage the NRCDs, which I think is a very important activity that should be pursued. I don't know how long it's going to take us, but I don't know. I'm positive that we cannot have it done by the time you need to turn in this report to the full committee.
That brings up a good point. Thank you, Commissioner. This committee's not going to sunset with the production of the report. We're going to continue evaluating not only what's in the report now, but what else might come up. And this will be treated as a post-report option that we will develop. So we'll work through it in that particular aspect. That with the intent to try to produce the report that we have by the September council meeting. Okay?
So basically, Lands and DWR will craft a report. We're hoping to have that completed by early fall, and then we're going to have some sort of a meeting with this panel before taking it to the council. Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yes. We'll go through the options that are presented with regards to storage through this particular bill and through this report here, and then probably in the one following the September council meeting is when we'll have the opportunity to discuss it with the council.
Mr. Chairman, that's a much more realistic timetable.
Yes,
I appreciate that.
not going to be September. We're not going to be.
Yeah, I was thinking that's pretty ambitious. That's getting a little concerning.
It will not happen, I can tell you.
It's not going to happen. And I think we may be looking at some preliminary in between the next two council meetings. So anyway, thank you so much for the cooperation of the State Land Department and ADWR on this. And Representative Griffin, thank you for bringing it to our attention. It does represent something that we had not reviewed on the committee. Now, did we have, yes, whatever your name is.
Just to let the committee know, I worked on supplying some of the initial data for the report. There were areas identified for underground storage. I don't remember how the final report was published. Sorry. But there were areas that did land on state land that were identified as unconsolidated materials, so not hard rock. So that was some of those areas have already been identified. So that data should be existed within the department already. That definitely be a leg up to focus on that a little bit more.
We're glad you came today, Doug. Let's save 2 days of work on the department's part. Anyway, thank you very much.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, so this is the report. I scrolled down to about page 7 or so, and it shows over 200 underground storage facilities that were identified. Of what you were referring to.
Yeah, there's actually 331.
Oh, thank you. I was just ballpark.
Is what the
331.
report stated.
Sites, though, not
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
two locations for the one.
And that is on the page following the location of potential dams.
Yes, this one is about the dams. Right. Then the follow-up figure 2 is underground storage facility sites.
Let me ask, how many of you have had access to the materials for today's agenda, including this report and the final draft, or the next to final draft of the long-term water augmentation committee report? Or should I ask again, is there anybody who doesn't have it who would like it? Okay, Cindy, how can we provide those things?
As in right now?
Nope.
Contact me after the meeting, and I will be sure and have your email. Everyone around this table should have had it. Every council member should have it. As well as, if you were on my stakeholders list, you would have it. But those that are still in use, I'll get it to you this afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, there were a few that came in after we completed our introductions. So if you came in and you didn't introduce yourself, we'll just start on this side of the table and work our way around.
Am I the first one? My name is Terry Sue Rossi, and I work for Arizona Water Company. I'm here for Bill Garfield today.
Stephanie Stonehouse, President of Arizona Farm Bureau.
Great. Is there anybody else on this side of the room before I get to Mr. Plummer?
Thank you.
Mr. Plummer?
Thank you.
Yes. See? He didn't just wander in. He actually knew he was coming here. Okay, I think... Thank you. Let's go to item number 3.
Wait, we have a couple more behind you there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we did
Oh, did you? Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. That's on
I
me.
will take extra time to introduce myself to you.
I love it when you do that, Clint, because it makes me feel a lot better. You do that just to make me feel good, I know. Those lately. Let's go to item number 3 on the agenda, final committee review of draft report. We're going to turn this over to Carollo, Mr. Humphreys, to walk us through the report and the executive summary, and we're going to have detailed discussions on it. I know you've had some comments already. Thanks, Amwa, for sending their representative with comments. So, at any rate, Richard, are you ready to go?
Yes, we can go. My purpose here is to get feedback from you with the goal of taking your comments and thoughts and incorporating them into the final report. As Wade mentioned, I've got comments from several people to take and incorporate it. I've looked at those comments briefly. I haven't studied each one of them in detail, but I can respond to at least some of the questions. So I'm curious, for the rest of you, do you come with comments or specific issues you want to talk about? Do you want to just step through the report, or what?
Here's what
you have.
Let's ask if there are any who have reviewed the report in advance and have comments in any way. If you have comments, let's take care of them now. If we don't have comments, or after we take care of the comments, let's start at the beginning of the executive summary and go through it page by page.
Okay.
Well, I have a comment, but I don't know. Basically, what method do you want? Basically, we're just going to go through the initial comments and then go through page by page?
That's right.
All right, well. I just thought one thing was a little bit awkwardly expressed. On page 10 of the executive summary, impediments to water augmentation, then we have the category of Indian water rights settlements. I would characterize settlements as a positive. What is an impediment to augmentation is the uncertainty. Perhaps that's just something that this is residual from my years of working for Senator Kyle, but the settlements are good. They reduce the uncertainty. So I think we need to characterize this in a different way. I just noticed that a short while before we came in here. But
the impediment is really those situations where there is not a settlement yet?
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are you talking primarily about this subheading, Indian water rights settlements, or are you talking about the text?
So if they...
Right, just the subheading. Well, so you have impediments to water augmentation, and then the next thing you see is Indian water rights settlements. So what the settlements bring, what they result in is clarity.
So maybe we should say steps
to water rights? I mean, characterize it more as the
Unresolved?
path to,
Yeah,
to
that's-
augmentation?
Unresolved Indian
That's
water rights.
Augmentation, yeah.
Or just say unresolved
Yeah.
Indian settlement?
Yeah, that might be better.
Because that'd be consistent with, well, no.
Okay,
We're going to use the word unresolved Indian water rights settlements. Is that fine with the committee?
I think the one
Or
distinction,
unresolved claims.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they could be, of course, resolved through the adjudication process.
And
Yeah,
are we changing,
I agree with, I think it's kind of interesting to split them out as if they're not part of the adjudication. The tribal settlements are going to be, they will be resolved as a result of the adjudication process. That's now the next section, and it's the same two proceedings.
okay. So are you suggesting that they be combined,
Yeah.
or that they be, one be a subset of the other?
Separately, it's the same claims are being addressed in the adjudication. So that's why it's an interesting thing to split.
And I think most of us would agree that it's best if they're settled rather than actually
Adjudicated.
adjudicated process, but they are right now sitting in the adjudication. Until such time, potentially, as they're resolved or kicked to federal court, that's where they'll be taken care of, so.
But I just think for presentation purposes, it's just easier if it's as it's currently presented.
You may want to reference that they're in the adjudication.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
But, so what you're suggesting is unresolved Indian water rights claims.
The fact is that those are large claims, but there are other large claims that are also as, impediments to the adjudication. So splitting them out is, I understand why, because they're some of the biggest and most complex claims, but there are other large claims, large federal claims, other large claims in the adjudications that are the same kind of impediment, that have the same impact. So.
And we don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but there's plenty of other federal.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Federal rights
Other federal claims.
related to Indian rights.
Right, right, that are complex, that involve both groundwater and surface water.
however, we're going to keep it as it is.
Okay.
Do you want to swap the order of them to imply that the adjudications is more important?
They both are the adjudications, that's the point. And so maybe simply referring, I think swapping the order and then saying the Indian water rights claims are part of this effort to adjudicate water rights, and explaining that separately makes sense.
Okay.
But the way it's written now, it sounds like there are these, it actually, it starts out with there are 22 federally recognized tribes, and so the first, I think 22 tribes, needing settlements, and it kind of creates the misimpression that we've already resolved a lot of those claims. Those claims have been resolved as a result of the adjudication.
Okay.
That's the place where that's happening.
You could fit them all under a category that says resolving water right claims,
Yeah.
federally state.
You could even say water certainty. Lack of water certainty is the impediment.
Okay.
We're going to change the order so that the Indian water rights claims that are unresolved is a subset of the adjudication, with the adjudication coming first. You do recognize that of the 22, half of those have already reached conclusions, so that is pointed out. But I think there is a strong enough interest in those particular claims in the state that we need to have them separated out so that people can look at it. Any other comments?
I have one comment on page 4 under brackish groundwater desalination.
Of the executive summary.
Of the executive summary, yeah. The Buckeye waterlogged area could yield up to 50,000 litre feet per year, and I thought I'd ask you this. I think in the cities, you're going to start utilizing more and more of their treated effluent, et cetera, for direct use. Will there be as many discharges going into the riverbed and towards that area of the AMA? And is that a good number, or should we put something in there that kind of puts a little caveat on that?
Well, I guess I like the view that this report, while I know Corolla wants to wrap it up, is that that this is going to hopefully be a living document, and that it's not something that will be revisited by this committee over time. So I guess there's an opportunity to modify that going forward. I'm not sure right now, need to get into that. I think the fact that it says could yield up to helps, rather than it shall yield 50,000.
Okay.
Are we fine with it as is then? Okay.
Wade, CAP had a comment on the impediments section.
Back down to that?
Yeah, just back down to that.
Let's go.
We're just hoping that the committee would realize that cost and ability to pay would also be considered as impediments.
Are you envisioning a section explaining that, or?
It could be a subsection of that, but just recognize that cost and ability to pay would be a significant point in the realization of any of these options considered. At least that discussion should be out. And we do have 4 other specific areas in the executive summary. I mean, we could address these in the executive summary, or just wait until we get to those points in the report. I imagine that whatever is going to manifest in the report will just translate over to the executive summary in the final edit. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And vice versa as well.
Sure. So I mean, I'm fine with waiting.
Let's take them up now.
Okay. All right. So the other 4, we have our first comment was the desal section, which is the opener in the executive summary. We were just hoping that would realize that it's binational and complicated and expensive option, and that the resource is shared with California and Nevada. As it is now, there's no mention of the other Lunar Basin states benefiting from that effort, and that's something we're going to have to work with them on. There is no other option besides the binational one as far as ocean desal is concerned. So that was...
And just let me clarify one thing on that. The wording here is exactly what AWR has given us to put in.
Okay.
So I'm fine with making changes, but I want to be clear that it's got to have AWR's approval.
We just, this is what's been on our...
Okay.
We just felt it was important to reference the other parties that would benefit from that in the process, so it doesn't appear that we're just acting...
Could you repeat that, Orestes?
Yeah, that we were concerned that the ocean desal didn't emphasize that the binational option was the only option there, realistically, and that the implications are it's a more complicated and expensive option than brackish groundwater, which is not portrayed as that in the text. It's portrayed as almost as on a par.
Option 1.
I can agree to that.
Yeah. So. We don't want to be. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. We don't want to be seen as acting as if we could do this ourselves. We're going to need other people in there to help us with that. And there's a process, and a framework for that process that's already set up.
Anything else on desal?
Just for brackish groundwater, the cost framework, the cost characterization for that brackish groundwater desal is, appears to be a little out of sync with some of the other references in the studies that we've seen. Suggest that it's competitive with California seawater projects, and which isn't true. The cost for any brackish groundwater desal is going to depend on the salinity, the brine disposal options, and then the conveyance options, many of which are competitive, if not, cheaper than the ocean desal. Some of the examples we've seen in California and Texas come in way under than on a per acre feet cost basis than what it would cost for ocean desal. So I guess we were going to simply suggest that equal treatment of both the drawbacks for each or the potential payoffs for each.
Okay. And now just on that topic, let me just give you a little bit of background.
Sure.
On the costs, our assumption has been, well, for brackish desal, it's the wells. We don't have a lot in there for pipelines because it's generic, but I know that wells would add to the cost. Treatment facilities, you realize there's a lot of variation in that cost depending on the salinity level, and quite frankly, when I went to my expert on the cost for that, he said, well, it's so variable, I'm not going to give you a cost at this level of planning, and I had to go back to a specific project to come up with this range.
Okay.
It also includes not only the salinity management, but also the storage and pumping up to the point where it enters into a water distribution system. And one of the things that I've seen in comparing some of the different costs are that not everybody includes that same set of assumptions. In fact, just as an example, in one of the meetings that Chuck was here, he was talking about one of the brine injections in El Paso that was significantly lower than the cost that we had. I went back to the people who did some of that work, and the feedback I got was, well, there was a push to show it as being low, and it didn't include this, and it didn't include that. So I hear you, it can vary significantly. It's a matter of how do we make or present the right assumptions so that people know what is in and what is out and what that variability can be.
I think that's just the point. I mean, we have, there's some incongruities with, for example, brackish groundwater, RO desal in the Colorado River Basin study. In Appendix F, the costs are not. The costs are not in line with your estimates. I have no problem with you putting your estimates. I think what we were just looking for is some distillation of your citations, your sources, how because that's touchy. That's a touchy point.
Okay.
Cost per acre. So maybe just further flesh out where you ended your estimates. Where are you getting the numbers from, and why they may or may not jive with things we've seen in other reports.
Okay.
The other two concerns we had a concern with the weather mod, the way the weather mod section was portrayed. I think the picture is a little misleading. I think, all of for the past 20 years, all of our upper basin investment in weather modification has all been ground-based.
Okay.
So that's all Wyoming, Utah, and Colorado. So they're all ground-based emitters. And the state of the technology and the state of the risks have largely been understood for a while now. I think the only uncertainty remaining, and this, by the way, is a permitted process. ADWR has a permitting process for weather modification in the state of Arizona. So there's precedent here as well that we can look for, but mostly the only uncertainty is the yield. And so we were hoping that the description of the weather mod augmentation option could be maybe tightened up, if possible, and with the realization that yield is really the only question.
Okay. When you talk about yield only as being the only unknown, are you also including physical location or geographical location?
Well, as far as placement of the units and things like that, that's less of a concern there's less uncertainty in that than there is in, well, how much are we getting for our efforts? How much when we actually go about the business of placing these, does it yield? So
because I'm just thinking, for example, if you did it at the White Mountains, how much of that is going to head south and how much of it is going to head north? To me, there's a question of not only how much water, but how much might land in different watersheds. Because I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if we can predict how much the stormfall is going to fall where.
No, but you don't cloud seed in places where there are no storms, so at least you have some idea of generally where to focus your efforts and where it might land.
Okay.
The only thing I would suggest is that if maybe none of the other risks are really as significant as that of how much do we, how successful is it?
Okay. And do you have a photo of a ground-based system?
We can certainly provide you with that.
If you could do that, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be no problem. And the only other comment we had was water buying and selling. It's described as firming in this document, the firming section. Is that firming only, or is that also, is that intentional, or could that apply to help addressing, large short areas in this community?
What page are you referring to?
That's the water rights firming.
Page 8.
Page 8.
As it's written now, it only covers firming. As we've gone through a variety of iterations earlier in the project, I've tried to combine some things, kind of like what you're suggesting, and it's usually been shot down because it becomes very confusing to people. Well, do you mean this or do you mean that when we start parsing definitions? So, we could expand it, but that would be my first hesitation of trying to say it includes more than just firming. I don't know how anyone feels about it.
Those are really only the substantive comments that I have.
Anyone else before Mr. Tenney makes his comments? Please, Mr. Tenney.
It was, the main one was also on page 8, where in regards with the firming discussion, it has this statement about, in the second paragraph, there's some firming agreements the authority of the banking authority may need to be expanded. I can't recall what the conversation was that generated the need for that statement. Unless there's a really good reason for that, it seems like it'd be best to just delete that sentence.
Yeah, that was part of really earlier discussions. I don't remember the details, but I'm fine with taking that sentence out.
Yeah, I just think it raises probably questions that don't need to be raised at this time. There'll be plenty of other questions raised under the...
I think Maureen had that in there, just Because the water bank can enter into water services agreement, maybe it's not 100% of a fit, and that's why it said that.
Oh, in regards to on-river
Yeah.
responsibilities, yeah.
Do anyone object to removing that? Thank you.
There's a little typo.
Oh, please, wait a minute.
You're going to say this.
Yeah.
You get it.
A little pop quiz here, see if you really actually read the executive summary on page 8. Did you catch the typo?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. You do that in class. Oh, yeah, I caught that. It's right there on the third to the last line of the paragraph above, modify. You can see that from back here?
There we go. You all passed now.
Yay.
Okay, we'll continue on now with really meaty stuff.
One more
Yes.
comment. Richard, I just thought I'd point out, we provided some additional comments on Roosevelt Dam, modified Roosevelt Dam. If you could just make sure that those are consistent with what's in the executive summary.
Yes,
Okay?
I've got them here, got them
Okay,
last
good.
night, so
Good.
I can incorporate that. I didn't see any issues with
Yeah.
those sections.
Yeah, we just kind of updated it a bit, so I just want to make sure that corrected in the report and in the executive summary.
Yep, okay.
Thank you.
Before we turn it over to Richard to take us through page by page of first the executive summary and then the report, those of you who have it, would you look at the cover of the executive summary and give us your response to that? Is this going to be fine? Didn't even spend any time on the wonderful work that it is. Cindy?
ADWR would prefer that, since this report is not produced by ADWR, nor was it produced for DWR, it was produced for the committee. DWR was the sponsor, so DWR would prefer that this logo not be here and that instead be on the title page, not the logo, but just mention that it was sponsored by ADWR.
Do we want to put the
Title page
name in the
four.
spot?
What's that?
We want to put the council name in the spot where the logo is?
Yeah, maybe we do. I wish we had a logo for the
Let's make one.
council.
Yeah.
Moses striking it off.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that was enough.
Sure.
Place for.
Okay, we can do that.
Sure. Richard, have at it.
That's about it.
Okay, just one. I'm wondering if there's value in some discussions of the comments we got in SRP. I don't know that we need to go into all of them, but there's one or two at least. I haven't studied them all. It was kind of late last night when I got them, but
Executive summary still?
yeah, their comments start with the executive summary. One of the comments that I'm curious about the committee's perception on was the statement in the report that it was not our intent to use agriculture water to augment municipal water supplies, which appeared to conflict with the firming augmentation method, where potentially you would take ag waters under an agreement by both parties and put into potentially some municipal use. The reason I want to raise a question on that is I put the statement up front about the intent of the study was not to take ag water and move it over to municipal, because that wasn't our objective, but I also wanted people who have that fear to maybe try and put that to rest a little bit by stating that in the document. And while that may appear to conflict with the firming augmentation, I guess my rationalization on that is that firming would be an agreement between willing parties, so no one's making the ag user give up his water, but if the ag user chooses to value the finances of some agreement over that would not be too much of a conflict with the original statement. So I'm just curious about the committee's reaction to that.
I think the initial statement needs to be explicitly stated.
Okay.
I agree with what stated.
Okay.
And I don't feel like forcing it.
Okay.
Warren?
Yeah, when we were reading through the report, we saw that also, but I would agree with Richard's characterization that the statement up front, the report's intent was not to suggest that this is how augmentation would occur, and when it is talked about and under firming, it is expressed as something that two willing parties would enter into. So initially I had the same thought, and then after looking at it, I agree with Richard, and I think the statement needs to stay as it is.
I think our issue is let's make sure it's just consistent throughout the document. Yeah, it's well understood what you mean by that. So,
okay.
And I know we have several comments in the executive summary that are kind of similar type issues. Go through them.
I don't know, but I thought there's also value in having a discussion about some of the comments. There was a comment on brackish groundwater desalination. The word here is sustainable level of brackish groundwater withdrawal. And the question is, what does that mean in this context? Which is a good question. I don't pretend to have the answer to it other than a very general statement that you wouldn't want to withdraw brackish groundwater where it depletes the aquifer by any means, but there should be some amount less than that. So I don't know how much we want to define or try to define that.
Well, so when...
It's similar to the other comment about up to 50,000 acre feet. We don't know exactly what that limit is, but it's something.
When you say sustainable here, do you mean that somehow that water is replenished? Is that what sustainable means in this context?
Yeah, that's probably right. Replenished at a rate that is withdrawn.
The natural recharge rate.
Yeah. And I can look at wording. Maybe that's the way to do it.
Yeah. And there are a few areas throughout the report where there are statements like that, which I just want to make sure we're clear about. Rest of the context.
I appreciate that.
Okay, and then the next one, well, I'm good with the Harquahala and Butler groundwater treatment into the canal. I can add a phrase there. That's not an issue. Let's talk about...
Let's go through that, their comment. I haven't seen it, but let's go through their comment on Harquahala and...
Okay. The comment is on pump groundwater from the Harquahala and Butler groundwater basins. It should be noted that development of this supply could also involve the need to treat the groundwater before it is transported in the CAP canal. And my understanding is that, if the water quality is such that it does need to be treated, then that's a fair statement to make, because that could involve additional costs.
I'm a little concerned with the wording.
Okay.
Which implies that the CAP canal has water standards. In other words, you can't put certain water quality you can't put in the canal, but it's the mixing of the groundwater with the water that's currently in the canal that makes it a problem. We can't degrade the quality of the water. I don't think CAP has a standard for what the water quality in the canal has to be.
No, we monitor regularly for a number of constituents.
but there's a need for a standard if you're putting non-project water into the canal, which...
That's correct.
System use agreement doesn't speak to that?
The system use agreement does.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And it
Big
has
part of it.
Trust.
Okay.
And I,
Getting there.
having had that discussion, I think we're fine. With the language as proposed.
Okay, and I was talking to Cindy, asking her to pull this up, and so I probably missed some of that discussion.
We ended up agreeing with the language.
As proposed.
Okay.
As proposed.
The next one, this is one where I've got some questions, and I'm looking for some guidance, but also some concurrence from the committee. Under expand agricultural conservation, there's a phrase in there that says farmer water allocation is fixed. And the statement from SRP is this isn't true in the areas of the state outside of the IMAs, and irrigation projects, and that includes Gulf Coast and parts of Mojave and La Paz counties.
And also areas under adjudication where it's not determined.
So, let me look at that.
It might be, in many cases, is fixed, but not in all cases.
Right.
In the county, it may sound fixed, but it's not.
It's also that this is a nuanced point that we're trying to make.
Right.
Where ag is using groundwater, using less groundwater does not augment the water supply. It just stretches out the amount of time, possibly, that the water is available. So if ag gets more efficient, it typically stretches supplies. But it's not, and you can't move that groundwater typically to a city or some other place. So that's one. Where it's a Yuma irrigation district, that water, without major changes, doesn't go anywhere. It stays there. So if a farmer becomes more efficient. So it depends on where is the farm, what is the water being used. And I think it was to the bigger point that we're not going to find big solutions in Arizona by pushing agricultural efficiencies because of other considerations about the governance and other hydrology.
Okay.
Doesn't that go back to the discussion though about the two different statements? I mean, really the point of, I agree that is incorrect, but isn't the point of the statement to say that just because a farm has water, and whether it's groundwater or surface water, it doesn't mean that water is now available for someone else to use.
Correct.
Maybe it should say.
I think that was the intent. Should we just state it, something like what you just said? Does that work for everyone?
Works for me, because I just...
Okay.
Write it down before she forgets.
Already gone.
Where it says does not free up water for another user, I think it would help if it says does not necessarily free up water for another user, or something like that.
Does not free up water for?
Does not necessarily free up water.
Okay.
Or it could be does not always, or something like that. So.
And what about reductions become efficiency?
Right, efficiencies instead of reductions might be, instead of the word reductions in water use.
Reduction's a little broader though.
Yeah.
There's, Richard, this particular paragraph is really complicated. Okay, and I know that those representing agriculture around the table have got to agree. In many cases, the farmer is farming everything that he can with the water that he's allocated through an irrigation district. In some of those cases, the efficiencies would not allow him to irrigate more land, but in other cases it would. So it's not a blanket application of this principle. In the Yuma County situation, the water allocations for the most part are sufficient to grow the agriculture that they choose to grow, with multiple crops on the same acre, those type of things. If they achieve efficiencies in Yuma County, then the water that is saved or conserved through the efficiencies becomes excess water, and hopefully everyone at the table knows what happens to excess water. So, see what you're trying to do here. Don't disagree with it, but it's a little more complicated.
Yep, okay.
I think it should say reductions or efficiencies in water use that a farmer obtains may allow the farmer to irrigate more of his own farmland instead of allows him to. Because he doesn't always allow him.
And that changes the tenor of the sentence and makes it a little more passive.
Yeah.
But I think you might want to include the possibility rather than the conclusion.
Okay.
Stephanie?
So, but why do you even have to have, I guess in that sense, why do you even have to have the farmer allows the farmer to irrigate more of his own farmland, along the lines of what you're saying, Wade? Why do you even have to have that in there? The point is basically it doesn't it might not necessarily free up water. Mm-hmm. Isn't that the point? I almost don't think you don't even need that.
Stephanie, we agree with that, even though it does happen.
Right, it does happen, but I don't think it's necessary for the point of it.
And if a farmer is just spreading the same amount of water over more acreage, then it's a moot point, right?
Right.
There are areas in the state where you can't do that in AMAs.
Right.
So, yeah, it makes sense to remove it.
Take it out.
Then where does it happen? Bruce? Where does it happen?
Where it doesn't happen? I know it's not.
It doesn't happen in Yuba County.
Yeah. So, I'd say take it out.
And it doesn't happen in the AMAs?
How about Yavapai County? This is where there is.
No, it's good if he'd been laying out some ground.
If you'd had some ground.
If you didn't have enough water to irrigate your whole 500 acres, and so you've only been farming 400 acres, you get more efficient, so now you can plant 450 acres instead of...
If you have irrigation ground.
Right, so it's...
In the AMAs.
Within an AMA.
That's what I thought we were...
But if you have 400 and you want to expand it to 500, you couldn't do that.
If you
don't have an IGS.
If it's not yours, right. Yeah.
There's a lot of legal nuances, and the groundwater surface water piece is important, whether you have historic irrigation.
Yep.
I take it out.
I would.
Basically, I think what Stephanie said is right. We want to make the point that ag efficiency is not the future water supply for the state.
Yes.
You mentioned a shield?
Yeah.
Why not just say that?
No, really, truly. Yeah.
It will immediately cut to the chase. And then you can put all the rest of it in there, and you don't have to worry about the nuances.
Yeah, we don't want to discourage ag. I mean, we don't want to be saying it's not good, but it isn't, yeah.
But it's not ag that you're really trying to focus on. You're trying to focus on people who think that if you shut down all of ag or significantly curtail ag activities in the state, suddenly you're going to have a new water supply. And that's not the point of what we're trying to get across.
And I think that's why I don't disagree with the language, but that's why we took it out of an augmentation option, not in best practices. And it does create more water for the system, but depending on what that system is, that can mean a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
It's really complicated. Right. So I'd probably make it as simple as possible.
And I think that sentence that we've been belaboring, to your point, Lisa, could probably move up to the beginning of the paragraph.
Yeah.
We know what we...
Whatever it says now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's going to look for the punchline.
Yeah.
So as close to the top as we can get the punchline, and then hope that we capture their attention for the rest of it, is really important on these type of issues, because we've got a lot of people who don't get it.
Okay, we'll revise that, and I think we have an answer.
And I do gather documents.
Okay. The next comment, I think we used the wrong word that created some confusion. The statement is, water yield from aquifer storage doesn't vary significantly based on the water supplies to be recharged. I think the intent of what we were trying to say is the water recharged for aquifer storage can vary significantly, essentially depending on the source of water and how much water is available from the source. And I think if we change that, then that comment goes away.
Available water to recharge.
Yes.
Okay.
Next comment, I think, was related to the cost. It says groundwater treatment isn't always required, but a conveyance system to deliver the recharged water to the recharge site is. That's correct. I think maybe the solution here is at least point out that you need to have conveyance. It's just that in a general cost thing, we don't have the information to put conveyance, a price towards conveyance.
Is that a general comment in the report? Is that an overarching statement that these cost estimates never include conveyance costs?
No, that is a fair general statement.
Yeah, so, and because it applies to all of the cost estimates, right?
Yes.
So are you suggesting, Cindy, adding a statement somewhere?
Yeah, that would be my suggestion, so that, or a footnote or...
Yeah.
Okay.
I think wherever we break down costs in a general way, it's a good idea to mention that.
Okay, the next one on reclaimed water section, recovery wells in an AMA can be permitted to recover reclaimed water credits, groundwater, or surface water. That's the quote from the section. The sentence doesn't make sense in this section. Why specifically AMAs? You don't need a recovery well to pump groundwater. Why mention groundwater or surface water in a reclaimed water section? Trying to find the statements there.
Since it is in the reclaimed water section, I think.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, you don't need to necessarily wrap in other water sources. Make the sentence just be reflective of reclaimed water.
Okay. All right, we can do that.
And what you're really are you trying to say that you can get credits in an AMA?
Well, that's part of what I was implying.
Recharging reclaimed?
But you can do storage and recovery outside of an AMA. You don't get credits, but you can still do.
Like you have the added benefit in an AMA of getting credit. It seems like the sentence reads as if it's about permitting wells, but I think your point is that in AMAs you get credit.
Okay. Okay, the next one, forming water supply for lower priority Colorado River water users. We talked about the first bullet point. The second bullet point section doesn't address the issue of needing CAP to forbear taking the transferred water under its excess water rights. In the parentheses, sponge contract. That's a new term for me. I don't know what sponge contract is.
Not sure. Let me get back to you on what that, bullet, so I can get a better understanding.
Okay, yeah, I don't understand what that one means.
Yeah, basically it's just.
What excess is that?
Yeah, it's just the excess water.
Excess water.
Yeah.
Bunches up the excess water,
Yeah.
use water.
It's called vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think the question is that a little bit too much in the weeds, the way we thought that maybe, I think we thought that the Arizona water banking, sentence wasn't necessary. It may be that we also don't need to talk about this, sort of legal hurdle here, the executive session.
Yeah, agree.
Yep.
okay. Next one, typo, I think we,
Richard, staying on firm water supply,
yep,
the last sentence of that section, the amount of water that could be transferred is unique to each agreement, but could be up to 30,000 acre feet per transfer, and the cost to be negotiated between willing parties. Where do we come up with 30,000 acre feet?
that actually came from a document produced by Westwater Research, looking at various kinds of water augmentation, and that was a number that they used.
Probably ought to take the number out
Okay,
and reword it so that it doesn't, it's not quantified. Because frankly, I'm aware of nothing that would quantify it.
okay. All right. The next section, modify operation of the Roosevelt Dam to use flood control space.
We updated that quite a bit.
Yeah.
A little bit more, provide a little more clarity, and same with the SRP CAP interconnect facility, so.
Okay. Yeah, and the original is what you gave me anyway, so I have no problem with just
updated.
changing it however you want. Okay. The last bullet on that section, existing law limits the ability to recharge this water. The section could identify the need for legislative changes that maximize the benefit of flood control space use.
Currently can't recharge that flood control water.
Okay.
You can't get recharge credits associated with that.
Would you also need federal Bureau of Reclamation permission to store the water? I mean, would it require more than just legislation?
It wouldn't be for the Bureau, it would be
Through the Army Corps?
Yeah, because it's flood control space. So they'd have to make a revision to the flood control manual.
That's what makes it so easy, doesn't it?
Yes. Another federal agency.
Decades' work.
There's no bureaucracy with the Corps.
Very streamlined.
That is
process,
report.
isn't it?
I mean, if that's in the report, I'd like to amend that statement.
Next section on SRP CAP interconnect facility. It looks like the comment here really is out of the main report as opposed to the executive summary.
We have a page number.
35. So the first comment is move the sentence about volume and cost to the end of the section. Edit it to read the capacity and cost of the facility are being determined.
Right.
I don't have any issues with that.
Page, other page. Page 35, photo.
Bruce, do we need that?
That sentence.
Do we need anything cost if they haven't been determined?
Yeah, we,
Well, maybe it's not.
You have 29.
you know, but if someone asks, yeah, I guess, but you're right.
Well,
It doesn't even need to be in there.
Two more. Two more. There.
be in my eyes.
The second bullet, this section focuses too much on NCS when the broadest benefit comes from recovery of long-term storage credits. I don't know if you have any particular thoughts you want to expand on that?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
I believe the next two bullet points kind of focus on what's indebted to be
Right.
focused on long-term storage credits.
Okay.
Right. We kind of corrected our own statement.
Okay. All right, I have no problem with that. And weather modification, I think this is back to the executive summary. We've referenced to hail and fog suppression, which we can do. They don't like the picture, and we've already addressed that.
Yeah, that looks like your water drop on a fire. Burning clouds.
When I looked for it, every place I looked for it, that picture did come up. That's why I thought it was a safe one, but we'll use the ground-based one. Forest management, stress the benefit of quality and resilience over increased supply. Our text in the full report does a good job with this emphasis. Okay, you can do that.
And I actually have a lot of comments on the rewrite of that section a little bit.
Okay.
But I didn't include them in here.
But I'd like to sit down with you and go through that, just to clean it up a bit.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Doesn't really contradict anything you have there, just kind of.
I was gonna say, do we get a copy of those up?
Yeah, no, I was doing it on the plane coming home.
All right, well, I see you around next week, Bruce, maybe we can get
Oh,
together.
definitely. Or can you give us a Word version of this and I'll just.
Yeah, I'll give you a version.
Yeah, that's great. I'll send it to everybody.
Okay, next section on the full report. Make sure changes from executive summary are reflected in the full report, that's noted. Next one, municipal water conservation. Water circulating devices do save water, but use more energy, which requires water to produce. Has there been any analysis done to quantify the efficiency of water savings when considering the entire cycle? My reaction on that one was, I understand the point. The reason I put the items in the list was I just went to AEWR's conservation list, and that was one of the items on the list, so.
Okay.
I don't know if you need me to change it or just leave it as it is.
My preference was to not include that one, just because there's different questions on it, but if it's coming from ADWR's list, I think I'd made a comment
They're not energy.
3 drafts,
I'll tell you that.
or 2 drafts ago about it.
I think if we don't want to create the impression that we're endorsing that particular kind of device as a strategy, so I would leave it out.
Okay.
Yeah, it seemed odd to specify that one when we're...
Everything else is more general, except for car wash water.
Yeah, they use it a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, we can take it off.
Yeah, true. And all that water is going to be recycled. Municipal system.
And I guess under the same second bullet, I would suggest that I don't know if this report needs to go down that path,
same way that we talked about water recirculating classes.
Yeah, my thought on that one, it goes to a level that's kind of beyond our scope, so.
Is water consumption for energy around 7% of the state's water demand, 2% of state's water demand, so we're talking of a fraction of 2%.
Yeah.
It's a very tiny amount. Water energy nexus isn't as big as we think.
Okay, next section, modify operations, Roosevelt Dam, use a flood control space. I think those are essentially the same edits as the other section. So we're good with that.
I think this is very similar to SRP-CAP interconnect facility.
And yeah, an SRP-CAP interconnect facility, I think we can just take those unless you have any objections. Okay, edit the 1.8 million acre feet of CAP long-term storage credits stored within.
I'll need to get back to you on that one.
Where?
So 1.8 million acre feet, that's an addition, so.
Oh, it's an addition to, do you know where that's at, long-term CAP?
Looks like it's 38.
I was thinking, well, it's under 5.3 if I'm reading this right.
Oh, that's 6.1.
Oh, here it is. I think it's on page 36, second paragraph.
The 1.8 million acre feet of CAP long-term storage credits stored within SRP's boundary.
Okay.
So we're just updating it with a new number, the most recent number.
Okay, that's good.
It's right in front of CAP.
Next one, replace the last sentence on page 36. With parties seeking to move water off project through the SCIF would need a transportation agreement with SRP, as well as a well lease agreement for a recovery of long-term storage credits if needed. Those parties would also see a system use agreement with CAP to wheel non-project water through the CAP canal.
Just more clarity.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with that.
Okay.
Then table 1A, ADWR exchange permits should be listed. And we can do that.
Okay.
6.1, weather modification, add text to highlight how weather modification would benefit from storage in Roosevelt flood control space and vice versa. You want to expand on that thought at all?
Sure. Yeah, if I may. We're going to need to spend a lot of time on it, just the thought announcing how the report all ties together. A lot of these augmentation items aren't one-offs, they all kind of tie into each other.
Yep.
So in the flood control section, we do mention that it is infrequent, that you'd fill up. So with something like weather modification, it could help improve that augmentation as well. So maybe just help me tie things together.
Okay.
So just a suggestion, we don't really need to get too much more into it.
Okay. Yeah, I see that point. That makes sense. For out-of-fight management, the goal of this augmentation option should be to remove invasive Window and tamarisk and replace with native species. There should not be a program to remove native cottonwoods and mesquites. I'm just curious on the committee's reaction to that. We had some comments about native species, so.
I guess my response would just be that native species can be just as invasive as non-native species and completely change the dynamics of a watershed. So to only focus on non-native invasive is ignoring some big issues in a lot of areas of the state where native species are becoming a monotypic type.
Okay.
Whether it's native or non-native, it's just like a lot of water.
Any other thoughts?
It's also providing an ecosystem.
It is, which is why we talked about the language including managed removal or whatever it was we had talked about. We didn't put anything in there that we're going to go out and take out all the mesquite. We talked about a managed approach.
I think a managed approach is fine.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's necessary to call out the species, cottonwood and mesquite, to just say along some native woody plants. I was just in the big Chino, and they, people were pointing out all the extra junipers, and wherever you go, there might be native species where there's a question whether it's also.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's more of a habitat issue.
All right.
Especially habitat for threatened and endangered species, if you're removing them as trees. Challenge.
But also the question of if you were to remove a certain amount of those, if they are encroaching and you were to remove a certain amount of those trees, you also benefit the habitat.
Right.
You bring the groundwater table up.
Exactly. So now you're creating you're improving the habitat of the species. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. We can tweak some wording there. Forestry management.
Chronic drought has really impacted the size of the fires, the extent of the fires.
Right.
But I provided you some separate language on that.
Okay.
And ignore the overgrazing.
Okay. And I don't think our intent was to say drought contributed to overstock, but it was.
Yeah, drought.
There's management issues that affects it. And then,
size and the intensity of the fires.
Okay.
The trees are just been so stressed, yeah.
Okay.
But I'll share that with you.
Okay.
Okay.
And next comment, be careful not to overpromise increased water supply.
Yeah.
We can do that.
I'll share some language with you again on that too.
Okay.
Okay.
Section 7.1, Indian water rights settlements. In Table 6, generalize the first bullet point under the Tonto Apache tribe and Yavapai Apache Nation rules. Say claims unresolved. Which we can do that, I assume everyone agrees.
Where are we talking in Table 6?
Tonto Apache tribe.
At the bottom of page 40.
Yep. So, what we had was claims to Colorado River still unresolved. So we're not stating Colorado River or Verde River, we're just saying they're still unresolved. And Hualapai Tribe, second bullet point, additional claims are proposed to be settled with 4,000 CAP, NIA, water, and funding. Which we can do that as well. Then Table A1 in the appendix, consider including the Flood Control Act, since we have Roosevelt Flood Control Space as an option, which we can also do. I have some other comments, which I think are primarily editorial. Executive summary. interesting how when you give a document to multiple people to read, everyone picks out different things. One of the things that everyone else totally missed was in the executive summary, all of our references of like 80,000. We had a slash acre feet per year, and we don't need the slash. Take all those out. So if we go back and step through things, before we go into any details, I'd like to have a discussion about, okay, so now you see these documents in the draft form. We've talked for a year about what we wanted this report to be and do, and what was the purpose of it. And how is this going to be used in messaging for people in different planning areas, or the governor's office, or whoever else, legislators, or whoever else wanted to use this document for something. You know, at a high level, what are your thoughts about, does this hit the mark? Is the message right? Is the tone right? You know, are there different stakeholders or parties that might look at this and react in different ways than we might expect? I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, if you've thought about it much, or how we might refine that to make sure the message is targeted correctly.
I feel like we ended up in a place that we weren't quite targeted for when we began, but where we expected to get. Now that's kind of a really ambiguous statement, but frankly, we knew that there wasn't going to be any big fixed solution that was going to satisfy a whole variety of people. We came to the conclusion, which I think is also correct, that it's hard to do much more than provide options. This is not a roadmap for going out and finding augmentation, but this does provide you with things that you can look at as far as augmentation is concerned. Did we find a whole bunch of water that people can access right now? I don't think so. But that was part of our responsibility, was to see if there was, identify it, if there wasn't, to call that out. And as reports go, I'm proud of this one.
Well, thank you. I hope, it seems a little bit awkward to have a list of options, and I agree that that's probably all we can do at this point, rather than have a recommendation of do this or do that. And so it places responsibility on whoever is using this and wanting documentation to pick from these options those things that are the most beneficial to them, or what they think that they can.
Didn't we feel like it wasn't our place to be telling?
That was the intent.
Just let the state where to go for their next bucket.
Yeah, I think that was something that from the pretty much at the beginning, we were wanting to just provide a list of tools, a list of options that folks could consider in each of those 22 planning areas. We weren't wanting to say this is what you should do, and also that we've stated that this isn't an exhaustive list. This is the best that we can put together at this time. Doesn't preclude that you folks in this area may think of something else that we didn't think of. And so I agree with Wade. I think we've reached a good tone. And we were mainly just trying to present some basic facts, options for people to consider. And so I think it's actually could be a useful document for the folks that want to consult it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've been sitting on this now 3 years, and I think originally the idea was, you know, we don't want this to be, we in Phoenix think you should do X, Y, and Z here and there. It was, here's some tools. We think these are possible things that could be done and leave it to, you know, essentially locals to say, is this something that we think is an option? I think we've done that. I don't think we've gone past that. And I think we've pointed out several other things that apply statewide that need to be addressed. I agree. So it's just second.
You know, Richard, as you know, we started with a very broad list of options and whittled it down to what was reasonable, what was doable, based off of existing conditions and recognition that we live in Arid State, so there are limited options. When it comes to finances, when it comes to costs, when it comes to available water supply, so I agree with what you said. I think it got us to a reasonable level for something to move forward on. More detailed analysis or more detailed study.
Well, Wade, you raised the idea that this might be some type of living document. I don't know if you have, I've not heard that before. It's interesting. Does that mean we will revisit some of these as needed or as requested, or do you have an idea of what that means?
Let's just take the storage, the water storage. That's not going to be in here.
Right.
We're either going to have to supplement or provide something in addition to, but many of these options that we're discussing are going to evolve. And we need to come back and revisit them and update people on what's happening with the different options and if new options come up. Sarah?
I was going to say, the Kyle Center is looking forward to working with our board to incorporate as much of this in the water blueprint, which, you know, our intention is that be an evolving blueprint for water resilience in the state. So the storage sites, I just emailed Susan Craig to say we need to be on the lookout to be sure to include that information, those layers in our blueprint too. So that's another opportunity to keep it going.
And I doubt we'll meet as frequently.
Well, I guess I was wondering.
At least every 2 years, I think.
At least once this will be, of course, presented to the full board, I presume they may have some feedback. I don't know what they'll ask, or if they'll ask us to expand on any of this, but I do think it's good enough for them to chew on for now.
Stephanie, did you have a comment?
No. I would like some clarification. When it is presented to the board, it's presented in final form. Is that correct? That's
Yes.
what's discussion around the table.
If we get it in a final form that we say this, we have voted on it and said this is our report, then we'll go ahead and do that. But it needs to be the committee now presents the report to the council.
And I would like to say Carrillo has been incredibly patient with us.
Oh, yay.
As the I want to suggest there'll be more for you to do. Thank you.
Well, I think at least of the comments we come through so far, it's manageable to get them done and incorporated. One of the areas, we talk about cost just a little bit, because this is an area of little discomfort on my end. I intended to do more on costs than what is presented here, and actually have more costing analysis and calculations than what we've presented. And I backed away from presenting them more than I have here, just because of the level of uncertainties. And I'm curious as to your reaction to that. And we talked about cost a little bit. But do you feel readers will want to see more of that, or want to have costs organized in a different way, where all I've done is put a range of costs in each section, where those costs are really intended to be at the level of comparing one option versus another, where there's information to do that, and there isn't information to do that in all situations. But going back to this comment that we had earlier about cost is a significant impediment to a number of these things, and I see that in the clients I work with, things like brackish desalination. Even if we recommend it, we do it in the context of, well, someday when the price is right, that's something you should do, rather than something that is going to make sense today necessarily.
We thought this was kind of a care package for engineers. In other words, if we give them the cost now, that might keep them from going to you later But we did discuss this. For those of you who haven't been at all of the committee meetings, we've discussed this at least twice, and we did come to the conclusion that we now have in the report, in that it's just really difficult to give you a good idea of cost today for when you might be looking at it tomorrow. And we just became so hesitant that we asked Richard to pull most of the cost information out. Unless there are other fellow engineers in the room that think we ought to put it back in, because they're not going to go with you on this, Richard. They want to keep it out so they can get it across their desk.
Yep.
I think the way it's presented is good. It's a range, and it's all you have to do is find out what it's costing today to have an acre-foot of treated water, and then you know.
Okay.
Yes?
I have a question. If somebody reads this report and they decide, you know, I'm really interested in option 3, how would they do that? Would they call you on the phone? Other than reading this page in this report, how would they move down that path?
If they look at an option,
Yes.
then they're going to have to find someone to consult with that can give them the in-depth information on it. At this table, perhaps other than Richard and Bruce and the rest is people like that that have in-depth understanding of each of these different projects, especially including the cost and the difficulties. They need to go to a consultant.
But in reality, aren't we really mostly talking about water providers, municipal or private water providers? I mean, that's who really is the
target,
the group of people who are looking for water augmentation.
And so a water provider would take this report to their engineering consultant?
I don't think the objective of this, I think this report is an objective, or the objective was more to broaden awareness of what are the realistic options for more water supply. And that would include, for example, people who live in a community and really care about this, or elected officials living in a community and wondering, what's going on with ocean desalination? This is very helpful in that respect, but it seems like water providers are pretty sophisticated about, at least some of our water providers are pretty sophisticated about where to go to DWR, go to Coca or another place.
Okay.
I don't think it was meant to be a manual for how to augment, more a broad overview of what are the options, what's the universe of realistic options, and what are their costs. We struggled a lot in the early days with trying to figure out what is the objective of the report. We kept, it seemed like at meeting after meeting, we kept having that conversation.
Good question, though. And we might want to put something in there, like if you need answers or something, direct them to find a professional who understands this, or go within your organization. Generally, you have those kind of people within your organization, if you're a municipality especially, that can handle these type of questions.
Or DWR has
the hotline.
A huge resource. In terms of expertise.
Hotline?
Hotline for finding more.
The Ocean Diesel Hotline.
And also, I think there's a recognition that we need to start planning for the long term. Here are some existing practical potential opportunities. But there's much more work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of these will be site-specific, depending,
Right.
So if it's a suite of options, potentially if you're a local official or elected official or somebody, water manager, may give you some ideas, and then you're going to have to do a lot more work. It's not going to be.
To Wade's point, though, maybe it might be worthwhile to make it clear that that nitty-gritty water planning tends to be left up to the local leaders and providers. I mean, maybe we need to say that somewhere in the introductory part, that it isn't the case that there's an overarching state water agency that is developing water projects and delivering water to communities. We leave it up to communities to develop their water supply.
Yep, I like that. I second that. That's a good thing.
Their choice on what options.
Yeah, they have autonomy, yeah.
The focus, because probably the number and volume of entities needing water is focused more in the municipal area. That doesn't mean that there's not agriculture that needs water as well.
Right.
Is that the alarm? The meeting over?
I don't know if it was me.
Now, Richard, do you want to go through the reports, the executive summary and the report itself, or do you think we've gotten all the comments that we're going to get?
Well, I don't think we have to go through it individually. If there's a desire to, we can. It's 10:30, we're scheduled till 12, but we don't have to go till 12.
I have an editorial comment.
Okay?
Back page.
Yep,
Executive summary.
yep.
And I haven't looked at the back page of the report yet. It's probably the same thing. It's a grammatical situation. I noticed that with regards to every name in there except Cindy's, there's a semicolon following it.
Okay. That's because I didn't put that semicolon before we added Vivian's name.
That's a semicolon.
And are we good with the names? Have we left anybody out?
That was the next question. If you think your name should be in there, please contact Cindy.
What if you think your name shouldn't be on there? No.
It's not going to happen, Stephanie.
No, you're there.
There's certainly space to add names if you want us to add them.
And there's plenty of space left on there if we want to put a, from CAP and list the 8, 10, no, 3 or 4 that are there, or from SRP, the 5 or 6 that are there. We can put them all in. But we would be glad, and we don't want to leave people out that were on the committee, that have had the opportunity to serve on the committee, even if today was your first day. We don't want to leave those kind of people out.
Share the blame.
Well, yeah. So that would be fine with us if you'd like to have your name in there. This was done based on probably the last 6 months ago is when you made this list up, or even earlier. It's been there a while.
Yeah.
I mean, Maureen's still on there, so,
Considering it's been a 3-year process, and she was involved for a year and a half.
Alerted that she was upset about it.
Now that you all have left me, no, there's no comment. The land department is perfect.
We didn't have any comments on the groundwater management planning section. I assume that means that everyone's good with that? Right up, okay.
Now, we encourage everyone to take a further look at the report. Well, what happens if you take a look at the report and you decide, I have some more comments, and want them submitted? Okay. We will take a look at those comments and determine whether or not we need to have another meeting, or if we can circulate them electronically or review and approve. We would prefer to do it by circulating them. If it becomes something really big that we want to include in there, then we will reluctantly call another meeting.
Should we send them to Cindy? Cindy, you, and Richard?
Most,
Yes,
probably easiest to send them to Cindy, and
Okay.
she'll take care of distribution.
Okay.
But we need a deadline.
Yes. Next Monday?
AMA's period.
Oh, yes.
Next Thursday.
Yeah, I got that comment. Now, as far as schedule,
So it's a little bit of time.
Are you doing it over the 4th?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
What,
That's the 5th of July.
would 2 weeks be too long, Richard, to allow them to make comments?
And then speak now or forever hold your peace.
yeah, 2 weeks would be fine.
Okay.
I'm not going to do anything on it the rest of this week. I'm going to be out of town.
Trying to reassure him.
But if we go, any other comments or thoughts in 2 weeks, then shortly after that, we can provide a revised set of documents that has everyone's comments incorporated that you can have as a final check.
That's July 9th.
We will distribute that electronically to the committee. You'll have 72 hours to say you have further comments or you have some problems. Doesn't mean you have to get them in, but if you haven't responded in 72 hours, we deem it approved by you.
Cool. Okay. Adoption by default. So that's when the adoption happens.
That's the adoption. I'll work with you on the language of the email. Presented for adoption, you can either comment on it, and we'll review the comments and determine whether or not they require further revision, or you can say I agree with it, or you can say nothing and it will be deemed you approve it.
And then this will be presented in September.
Yes, and it needs to be there, we need to have it to ADWR probably 30 days out. So they would like to distribute it 3 weeks out, and having it to them 30 days out would make it possible. Again, I suspect it's going to be distributed electronically.
Yes.
Any other comments on the report? Yes, Stephanie.
I had some comments for the section 4, full report.
Sure.
Robert's
with you. He already left.
What page is that? 19 of the full report.
Okay.
So on there's a list there, first of all, on the list, I think it would be better instead of saying implement more efficient irrigation methods that irrigate based on actual crop water use. I think it would be better to use language which says implement more efficient irrigation methods that irrigate based on crop, soil, and water assessments.
Okay.
And then I would actually just eliminate 9, which is instant irrigation, because that is assumed in more efficient irrigation methods. I think it's weird just to call out one because it makes people think that that should be their goal, and it's not practical all the time. So I think that should just be assumed to be in number 1. And then 10, which says grow crops at times other than during peak summer temperatures. I think it would be better to say crop rotation and selection. Grow crops based upon crop rotation and selection, which recognizes seasonal temperature variances.
Okay.
Stephanie, could you review those changes again?
Do you want me to say it again? Okay, so starting with, the first one was changing that language so that it reads, implement more efficient irrigation methods that irrigate based on crop, soil, and water assessment. And then the second recommendation was to eliminate number 9 as implement drip irrigation, being that it should be assumed to be in number 1. And then the third was change that language to say growing crops. Crop rotation and selection which recognizes seasonal temperature variances.
Okay.
And then on the text below, we've already talked about those changes in this executive summary, but there's different language in there that says, well, first sentence, agriculture is a for-profit enterprise, so agricultural conservation practices must be profitable for the farmers or subsidized by others. I think it would be better to say agricultural conservation practices must be economically feasible.
Period after feasible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We would hope we wouldn't use the word subsidized on there.
Unless in parentheses you put you value it.
Then I have a question, I guess, on the, what page is that? Page 20. I understand including the examples that are listed there, but I don't know how applicable they are broadly. So I'm just not sure about using the real estate in the report.
You're on 25.
I'm not saying this should come out, I guess I'm just questioning why are they in there, just because they're not necessarily broadly,
Well,
and they're fairly small scale.
right. The intention for photographs generally in the report is to add interest.
No, I'm not talking about the program, I'm talking about the bullets, which explain what or is that just explaining each picture, I guess?
Yeah, this is background on each picture.
Well, it doesn't really,
The actual examples in the bullets, which I know came from Kim, we talked to Kim. So I think she would agree that they're not necessarily something that would apply everywhere. I think that the idea was to get something in here. I would even suggest if you have additional examples that might be more expansive, we include those as well.
yeah, or add to it, just because I think it just gives the impression that that would be broadly applicable and.
Could be done anywhere.
Yeah, and it can, so.
And that is a very fair point. If there's.
So we could add to it, certainly.
I would think that would be good.
Yeah, I think that would be better, instead of taking it out, add to it.
I agree, yeah.
And are there any particular methods you think would be useful or helpful in adding to it?
Well, it kind of has to do with my last comment. I think there's different areas. You already have your, of course that's on a different scale too, but you could use a specific example in Yuma, you could use a specific example in Casa Grande, and take different types of irrigation, the same sort of thing, it's just more broadly applicable
Sure.
to commercial agriculture, larger operations.
Yeah, and I would second that and say that, it is, I think, what you want to capture in here, and it's not untrue for a lot of the things in here, is it is site-specific, and it's very conditional specific. And so I think, the more that we could add in there, the better, because they're going to be applicable in different areas. I know it's late, but...
and the concept that things are going to change applies to agriculture because they have always changed in agriculture. And the one we can't put down yet, but next year we're likely to be able to add it with a bang, is hemp. Hemp may change the whole landscape, so we don't know yet.
Another comment I had was on the references. I know you have the Water Resources Research Center, which includes the Yuma study, but I think that the Yuma study should be its own reference because it goes into detail about a lot of the reasons why sprinklers for good, or why you can use strip in some places and you can't in others. So if somebody wanted more information about that, I think that would be good to add to the.
Actually, Bruce is like jojoba. You need 1 million acres, and we never got there.
And Wade would know the specific, probably. But what's the specific title of the Yuma report on the agricultural irrigation efficiency. I guess, yeah, you have it. I just think it has a lot of detail in it that is helpful.
Okay.
Are you going to be able to
Just Google that, will you?
some of the answers?
Yeah, we can provide this to add.
It's not Bruce. Richard, I don't know if you have a copy of that report, case study in efficiency, groundwater, and agriculture.
I may not. If you've got that, you can send me a copy then.
Copy.
Okay.
Nick, could you go back to the bullet point page before where Stephanie started her discussion?
Sure. This one?
Yeah. I guess as a council member who wanted to come to this meeting just to kind of hear some of your initial discussion, and who hasn't read your draft yet, help me with the discussion about grow low water use crops. Just in general, I mean, obviously it would, just like if, I mean, and how you tie the economics to that. I know, I appreciate the paragraph that talks about, you know, we're businesses that have to, you know, turn a profit so we can pay our bills and pay our employees and grow the crops that feed everybody. But to me, I think it's an obvious line that if there was a crop available that used less water that was profitable, we'd certainly be migrating to it, just like we've worked in technology for years to reduce water consumption for cotton and alfalfa and corn silage and all the different things we've done. But it just makes it sound so easy to have that number 2 bullet there that just says, well, just, you know, if you don't drive your car, you save gas. That's, you know.
Well, now,
yeah.
I think that, again, that came from TNC. I imagine, I'm not a farm guy, I'm a water guy, but I oversee all of these projects in some form or another. And I think that one specifically, it's not easy to do, precisely what you've said. It's not easy to just switch to a low water use crop because, for many reasons, oftentimes they're not as profitable. And we didn't go into a lot of detail here. I think we talked about the Sinagua Malt project, but in the Verde, we're hoping to, and we're well on our way to transferring some 660 acres, which I know isn't huge, from alfalfa to barley. It was very difficult to do, though, because farmers weren't going to make nearly as much money with the barley as they were with the alfalfa, and so we did an impact investment project to create a malt house down there so they didn't have to ship their barley all the way to Washington to malt it. So I think it is important to recognize that's going to save a lot of water, but it's not easy to do, and I forget how much.
Climate has a lot to do with whether you can grow malted barley in,
well,
you can do it in the Verde Valley, but you probably can't.
You have to malt it somewhere, right. But we actually did, in this particular case, the barley is really good quality, and the malt has worked out really well, and we sold it to a bunch of breweries here. I think it's important to say, but I also think it's important to recognize it's a lot harder to do than it just says.
Well, that's why it was kind of like, no duh.
Well, can we say better, instead of that, to say transition to low water use crops where applicable? Where feasible?
Where economically feasible.
Something, because, I mean, that, if you just read that leads me to believe that, there's lots of options that are very viable, and I'm just stuck in my rut as a farmer, and I'm not going to ever try them. Well, we've sent pasta to Italy when that market's been so much better for durum wheat, and now that market's gone, so I mean, to me, it's
the other part of it is that we grow a lot of alfalfa because there's a market for it.
Right.
You know?
Right. But if you can create a substitute where you can make as much and use less water, you want to do it.
We're all in.
It's not capturing how difficult it is.
We're all in. Yeah.
I think it is something that it's important to do, but you need to do it smartly. And that's not as easy as it sounds just by looking at number 2, which I maybe we just.
But parentheses, this is super hard.
we can definitely.
In a way that, I think all of this is important to say, and I know you said it, and I know it's in here, but I think reiterate to the extent we need to, that it needs to be done in a way that makes economic sense. I mean, we've said over and over again, we don't want to take the agricultural supply and make it a municipal. That's not what we're trying to do. These things are good to do. It creates more water in the system for various purposes, but they need to be done in a way that makes sense for the people that are using the water. And that's not easy.
Could you change it to say incorporate low water use crops into your crop mix or something like that? Would that be?
I think going back to what Stephanie said, when feasible or economically feasible, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the word is, because to me, if some bureaucrats can open this up and say, oh, you know, Farmer John in Pinal County, where the weather is much different than in the Verde Valley, just you need to start switching over. You need to grow the barley to malt it, and you know, it's easy. Here's the list. And
Wait, so you don't want me to put that in our farm, Lisa?
you certainly may try.
Was gonna do that today.
But I just think there ought to be some caveat that expresses that, you know, when applicable or when possible, or you know, because I just conditions permit.
When conditions.
Yeah.
And again, at the very front, it might make sense to again reiterate that, you know, these work some places and not others.
Right.
And you know, this is a list of possibilities, and it's going to be dependent on the location and the economics.
Part of what I'm also hearing is that we need to somehow state and give the farmers credits for all the adaptations that they've already done, just like we give the municipal water users credit for conservation that they've done or reclaimed water, because it's not like they're just sitting.
Absolutely. The Hausers on the next page have gone way out on a limb. I mean, they've worked with us for years now, and they didn't have to, and, you know.
Well, I think a lot of them, like 3 and 4, and, you know, are things that no matter if you farm in Yuma or Parker or Scottsdale or, you know, up in the Verde Valley, lining ditches, laser leveling, all those things are things that aren't crop specific really, that they're more efficient.
Right.
But when you get to about using different crops, then you're crossing the line into, you know, what's economical for a guy, as opposed to, you know, lining ditches saves water. It's
Simple
proven.
conveyance.
Right. Yeah. And so to me, it's like apples and oranges. So I think there ought to be some kind of caveat in there.
Okay.
Well, but, yeah, even lining ditches or piping ditches, you don't pipe ditches, you pipe the laterals and so forth, but even that type of stuff, it has to be economically feasible, and it does have to have a water component to it. In other words, it's got to be beneficial for people getting the water.
Yep.
Any other comments or thoughts?
Well then, with the submission of the report to the committee, it will conclude the project. Is there a hand up over here? But it will not conclude the committee. We will schedule a meeting in between the next 2 council meetings. So wait and see how that turns out. If it looks like we need one earlier so we can get something done closer to the meeting, or if it looks like we need to meet in the middle, we'll do that, but we'll take a look at the schedule. Cindy, what's the meeting of the council after September?
December 3rd.
December?
3rd.
We'll look in between there, probably in the middle. Start sending out some dates. Any other questions? Yes, you have 2 questions or 2 points?
2 weeks, right, for any final comments on this?
2 weeks from today, if you're going to make comments, you need to have them in. That's only fair to Richard and everybody who's working on this, so we need to have them in. And then we'll turn it around just as quickly as we can and get it back out to you for your final approval using the process that I've described. Thank you so much for coming. We'll see you at least in September 8th.
Thanks, Wade.
But if there's something you want to edit, we can do that.
Yeah.
Get it over there?
That PDF?
You should have.
I do. There's no other copy other than that. Good. That's one we can work off.
Yeah, but would you rather a Word? Because he's going to get me a
When you get a Word document.
Well, November starts to get.
Then we'll all get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if during the council meeting,
Okay.
or lots of,
You need
we're gonna move because we need some work done in order to change things. Take
You would like to back and forth? Yeah, if you have the executive.
You know, I mean,
So we are gonna have something completely for
having this report done.
the land.
That might even be early. Sooner than that? No, that might be early to have.
Oh, yeah.
If Lisa thinks we can get this done, then yeah, that would be fine, because we're gonna need to turn that around and get it back to the
But
council.
you were saying you wanted to get that in.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Yes, we want to present the committee's this report to the council at the December meeting, and so we need to get the revised to the council at least 50 days in advance so they can distribute it.
Make sure your staff
Have a conversation.
email.
Okay, all right. Doug, good to see you. Yeah. That and other lies.
Yeah, so that was my.
I will, yeah, I appreciate that.
Did I do that right?
Yes, you're perfect.
Okay, and you were like, oh,
Thank you.
yeah. And are you in there?
Yeah, more than likely I'll be serving as alternate on all of these meetings, but unfortunately,
Yeah, legal,
we're in the process of hiring, so,